Ever since 2021, it feels as if AEW has been trying to chase the vibes and the feelings that they had when they were at their peak. 2021, if you speak to most people, was the peak of AEW. You had the introduction of CM Punk into AEW. You had All Out 2021, which is probably the crown jewel of AEW pay-per-views. And ever since that time period, they have been chasing it. And I feel right now, in the time period that we in, is the closest we have gotten to restoring the feeling. Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Kevin Zwicker from Fast Count coming at you. And before I get into this live, please remember to hit the like button and subscribe. Hit the like button and subscribe. Hit the like button and subscribe. So coming off a very, very strong pay-per-view in Double or Nothing, we had a show that was bookended by both of the Owen Hart Cup winners. They started off with the men, ended with the ladies, and this was the reverse as to what they did last year, where they started with the ladies and ended with the men. And this was a very strong episode of Dynamite. From a storytelling perspective, from an in-ring perspective, I feel as if they were really trying to deliver a strong show coming off of the momentum of Double or Nothing. I feel like they were able to really succeed in that manner. They started off the show with the Owen winner, the men's, Hangman Adam Page, which has been the man of the people for the last couple of months. He's really gained a lot of momentum. People are really starting to dig into the story that they're telling with him, this redemption arc that hopefully will end with him holding the AEW championship at All In against Jon Moxley and ending the Death Riders. He comes in, he's introduced by Tony Schiavone. He gets a warm embrace. He's holding that Owen Cup championship belt around his waist, looking very strong, very healthy there in El Paso, Texas tonight, the home of Eddie Guerrero. And you have Hangman coming out there. And, majority of his promos start very philosophical, very large vocabulary words, but he comes out and he says, triumph is in life, is fleeting, and so is defeat. And for the last 2 years, I've lost sight of that. He goes on to really praise Will Ospreay, and he says, I was wrong about Will. This is a guy who gave me the fight of my life. He is somebody who proved to me in that ring by what he was able to accomplish that he is somebody who could carry this company. He is somebody who is worthy of that gold. And then he brings up how the Owen title is temporary. He takes the belt. He hands it to Tony Schiavone because, as we all know, this isn't a championship that they carry all year. It's not like the Continental Classic title that Okada has. He hands it to Tony Schiavone. Then he gets interrupted after he makes this promise to the people that at All In, he will be coming out the AEW champion, because after these 7 months under Jon Moxley, that title has been held hostage, and he views that championship as like this light at the end of the tunnel. It represents so many different things for so many different people. And then he gets interrupted by an old friend, none other than Swerve Strickland. I've made this comparison multiple different times, and I believe that Swerve versus Hangman is AEW's version of Rock and Austin. And before you come at me, I say that because it's a feud that could pick up at any time, at any point of the year, and it still gets a hot reaction from the crowd. They could wrestle 1,000 times like Austin and Rock did, and people would be into it every single time. And Swerve comes in and he says, you know what, man? He starts rolling that promo that the Bucks delivered when they made their return at Dynasty, where they cost Swerve Strickland the AEW championship against Jon Moxley. You see the promo playing, reminding everybody about how when they came out, they said that they cost Swerve that title for Hangman. They did it for Hangman. They still have love for Hanger, and they know that Hanger still has love for him. And then Swerve sits there and asks Hangman, like, don't bullshit me. Did you have anything to do with this? And you have Hangman call Swerve a dumbass. He says, man, if I wanted to screw you out of that title, because if you guys remember, he promised that he would never let Swerve regain that title, I would have done that myself. They go face to face. None other than Will Ospreay comes out. And this is like the trifecta of AEW right now. The 3 hottest male acts in the company. All 3 of their biggest names, the guys who have really kind of been in the forefront of this renaissance that AEW is currently in the middle of. They face each other. As we all know, Swerve and Will Ospreay have this friendship, this long history together. And Will comes out and he says, Swerve, don't like getting into your business, but you're wrong about Hangman. This guy cares. I felt him in the ring, and even though I wasn't able to win, this guy cares. He wants to make this place better. He wants to improve the situation that they're in. The people believe in him. People are finally starting to trust AEW again, which was kind of a veiled shot due to the fact that WWE didn't have the best weekend when it came to Saturday night's main event and all of that, and they're kind of trying to capitalize on the momentum of Double or Nothing and how most people really loved it, which was crazy, right? I know how you guys. I don't know how your guys' algorithm is, when it comes to social media, but 90% of the time, my timeline is pretty anti-AEW, right? It's either the sicko fans who like praise every single thing that they do, or it's like it's the other side where it's like they could resurrect Randy Savage in the middle of that ring, and all of a sudden people would have a problem with it, right? So he's talking about that, right? And then Will tries to play peacemaker, and he says, man, all of us together, we might be able to fix this thing. We might be able to come together and defeat the Death Riders if we all work together. Swerve Strickland slaps the mic out of Will Ospreay's hand. He tells Will, I will never work with him. And you see Hangman saying the exact same thing. And that's the end of that opening segment. Very solid. I think any time that you're able to get the crowd emotionally invested, and that's what they were able to do with Hangman. And it pretty much sets up the fact that we might possibly see Will Ospreay and Swerve Strickland team up against the remaining members of the Death Riders, and somehow, some way, they are going to be involved in the main event. Because as we all know, when it comes to Jon Moxley matches, it's not one-on-one. It's usually like 8v1. So they're going to need as much help as they possibly get if we're going to see a title change at All In, which I think that we're going to get, right? I know that there's people who are floating this theory that, maybe that at All In, this could be AEW's version of WrestleMania 39. If you don't remember WrestleMania 39, that's where everybody thought Cody Rhodes was going to win the title, but he didn't. It was going to set up an even longer arc. But I don't think that we're going to be in a position where there's going to be another guy who makes the most sense, has the emotion behind the crowd than Hangman Adam Page at this point. And I get the long-term storylines. When you look back at the way that they were able to tell the Cody Rhodes storyline, it probably went the way that it should have. But I cannot see people, wanting to endure another year of the Death Riders holding the title. And let's just be real, man. Jon Moxley isn't Roman Reigns, So I don't think they'll be able to carry that, right? This leads into the Death Riders heading into the arena, and we get a mixed tag 6-man person match where you had Mark Briscoe and Speedball Mike Bailey and Willow Nightingale against Gabe Kidd, who's the hired mercenary of the Death Riders, Jon Moxley and Marina Shafir. Guys, before I get more into it, please remember to hit the like button and subscribe. Hit the like button and subscribe. Hit the like button and subscribe. It's free. It helps the channel out in more ways than you even know. And if you guys are able to do all these creative, like TikToks and all these different creative, edits, it's more than simple to just hit that like button and subscribe. And it's free, right? This is a really good match. Speedball's coming off of losing against Okada, which there's no shame in that. I think it's pretty well documented that Okada, at least for the past 20 years, is one of the best in-ring wrestlers of all time. He's already in the Observer Hall of Fame. Okada's great. Everybody loves him. I'm personally a big fan. I think it's going to be great when we finally see him and Kenny Omega lock up in the States in a big stadium like All In is going to be. And he was pretty much the MVP of this match. I think that there was trying to emphasize, make him look as good as you possibly can coming off of that defeat. And they were able to accomplish that. Gabe Kidd, huge fan of his. I got confused throughout the whole match seeing him and Mox because, they're both bald white guys. So the baldness confuses me a little bit, much. And Briscoe, man, he's always game for everything. He was a bloody mess at Double or Nothing. So the guy is just always game for anything. This was very solid. The ladies did their thing. Willow and Marina, A1 type of match. Very talented, very entertaining. At the end of the day, we saw Jon Moxley sit there and choke Mike Briscoe out after we saw multiple different interferences from the Death Riders. You had Wheeler interfere, which you all knew was going to happen. You had Claudio interfere, but he was neutralized by Commander. They will be having a match on Collision to qualify for this four-way for next week on Dynamite for Kenny Omega's championship, which should be good. Anytime you see Kenny Omega, whether it's on free TV or pay-per-view, it's always going to be a good time, and this was a good match for the most part. Next, we get a video package showing off the Hurt Syndicate. As we know, at Double or Nothing, they were able to retain their championship. This was MJF's first pay-per-view as an official member of the Hurt Syndicate, and they're going on talking about how they've had these multiple different successful title defenses. MJF stated again how he's looking forward to reacquiring the Triple B, which I'm good off of. I think MJF's title reign was probably the worst in AEW's history so far. Not all his fault, but I think it really wasn't that great. And then he ends it with their tagline that they has that this is not personal, it is just business. Then we go off to see another video package of a promo from Ricochet, which I thought was very interesting. Ricochet, of course, beat Briscoe in that stretcher match at Double or Nothing, and he goes on and he starts naming all these different groups. We got like the Hurt Syndicate, the Death Riders, all these different people. He's like, I need a group, man. I'm on this quest for gold, but we got all these different people, all these different groups, and I need myself a group who's going to be able to help me reacquire some gold. Not reacquire, because I never had gold in AEW. Get some gold in AEW, and for me to be the captain of the ship. He ends it with his signature Jada Kiss laugh. And then we get into the no DQ women's tag team match between Megan Payne and Penelope versus Anna Jay and Harley Cameron. Harley Cameron is a freaking warrior, right? I think Harley is somebody who's really been one of the unsung heroes in AEW. She's been very talented. She's a very talented individual. Very much so. You see her grinding and being able to really, carve herself a nice lane in AEW this year. Specifically, her match with Mercedes Moné, the build-up, I think that really was able to get her attention from a lot of people who really didn't view her as that big of a deal. And this match, she was able to showcase her toughness some more. The main thing that happened was it looked like Megan Payne broke her nose because she just face planted her on those steel steps, which looked very painful. You saw blood gushing everywhere. This is violent. Anytime that they let the ladies, show off their violent side, I think that people get into it. I know that a lot of times people online or there's people who are very critical say, you don't need violence that much. You don't need that much violence. But I think that's what sets them apart, from WWE. WWE a lot of times can be very sanitized. We see reports coming out that they're trying to sanitize what's going on with TNA because obviously they have a working relationship with them. But I think this is what sets AEW apart from those guys, the fact that they just go balls to the wall, right? And look, that's not for everybody. I think there's been multiple different occasions where I've watched a match and I'm like, I don't think that needed all that, but a little violence doesn't hurt every once in a while, right? You see Megan Payne and Penelope win this match with a Doomsday device. Big win for Megan. I think that they've been able to really, ever since she's lost that title match to Toni Storm, they've been trying their best to keep this momentum for her. AEW is known, and Tony Khan is known for not booking the big men that very well. And now you got somebody like Megan Payne, who's obviously larger in stature. And I think he's been able to do a good job with her. I think that this should be a challenge for both of the two major promotions that book better feuds for the women that don't involve the title. We have these compelling feuds with the men, mainly like Hangman versus Swerve that have nothing to do with the title for the most part. And I think that they should be able to challenge themselves and do the exact same thing with the women because there's a lot of talented women. You saw Diana Peraza earlier today on Twitter, basically saying that they're doing nothing with her. That was funny, right? I know. Did some of you guys catch that? That was funny. We also saw, what's her name? Mariah May, show off her hotel room, because Mariah May is in that, basically wrestling purgatory, right? Because it's been pretty much reported by multiple different sources that she's not resigning with AEW. She is WWE bound, and that kind of puts Tony in a weird position, because it's like, Mariah's talented, but why am I going to use her if it's just going to boost her stock for when she goes to the WWE? So she's in a tricky situation. We see Mercedes Moné, the women's Owen Cup winner, pull up in a lowrider tribute to her GOAT, Eddie Guerrero, in his hometown of El Paso. You have the Ops come out, and they're defending their trios title against the Frat House. If you're not too familiar with the Frat House, they're mostly focused on an ROH. You got Griff Garrison, you got Preston Vance, you got Cole Carter, and they're doing this Frat House gimmick. Bunch of typical white boy shit. That's all I could describe it as, typical white boy shit. Remember, I live in North Carolina. I'm not going to tell you guys exactly, because you guys are weird. Going to come fuck me up in my own house. But ECU is the big, PWI. Don't know what it stands for, Predominantly White Institute, in North Carolina. And this was the first time I've ever seen big, hairy white guys in togas. I thought that was something that was just in the movies. But no, it's real. And they sit around and they drink beer and they make crazy noises and they get drunk. And that's typically what we saw. Obviously, the Ops won this. We still haven't seen the return of Hook. We saw Hook at Double or Nothing. Didn't see any Hook on tonight's episode of Dynamite. I'm sure that we're going to see him eventually, and I'm sure that what we're leading to is that potential rematch of Hook versus Samoa Joe, because I think it makes a lot of logical sense. Hook was initially in the Ops. He was replaced by Powerhouse Hobbs. I think that there's obvious reasons why he would have resentment towards Samoa Joe. I think that the first time that they had that match was really good, so I'd be looking forward to a second one. Second time, I would like to see Hook win, depending on his status, because we hear a lot, Hook, depends on him. He has some time on his deal. I think that they said that he is either represented by Barry Bloom or he's looking to be represented by Barry Bloom. And if that's the case, that the usual writing on the wall with that is he's going to get a big check from Tony Khan in AEW. Next, we have Jamie Hayter come to the ring, and she's interviewed by Renee Paquette. Jamie Hayter, obviously coming off of a disappointing loss to Mercedes Moné in the Owen. You have Renee ask Jamie what's next after she lost that match, and we see the arena turn black, and we see the debut of Tekla. She lays out Jamie Hayter. She does her signature spider pose. As we all know, she is the Toxic Spider. And that's it. That's it. It felt as if people didn't know who she was. She didn't get that loud of a reaction. But Tekla's a very interesting performer. I think that for the most part, prior to her going to AEW, I know a lot of people were saying that she was going to be WWE bound because the connection that Stardom has with WWE now, because of Rossi, it feels like there's kind of a pipeline there. But she's in AEW. Didn't get that much of a pop. It was quick. Blink and you missed the debut. But I'm looking forward to see what she does. And if we're getting a feud between her and Jamie, I think that's a good start. Jamie's obviously very talented. Tekla, very talented in-ring performer. If you are not familiar with her work, I suggest that you seek it out because she's a pretty good individual when it comes to her in-ring work. So I'm looking forward to a potential match, but this debut kind of felt flat. Because like I said, it felt as if a lot of people didn't know who she was. Or if they knew who she was, didn't give a fuck. Next, we get a hype package from Mystico. This Saturday on Collision, it's going to be very heavy CMLL, featuring performers. We got all these people that are trying to qualify for the four-way for Kenny Omega's title at Fight for the Fallen next week. It's going to be a 4-hour block of AEW television. And I don't know if we're going to go live. We might just, I don't know, we might just shoot a lot of content afterwards. Don't know how it's going to, because we go kind of late, but we could fit into it. We could do it. It just depends. But I think I might do it. Next, we have Adam Cole versus Kyle Fletcher. After the Don Callis family won at Double or Nothing, Kyle Fletcher earned this title shot against Adam Cole. This is just two hoopers hooping. Kyle Fletcher is obviously one of the breakthrough performers in AEW. Feel bad for Mark Davis. But every once in a while, it takes an injury like that. And I'm not saying this as, gloating or anything like that, but it takes an injury sometimes to unlock somebody's potential. And that's what we've been getting from Kyle Fletcher. Kyle Fletcher, hard hitting. Adam Cole, TNT champion. This is his second defense of the TNT champion. We don't really see a lot of Adam Cole on Dynamite these days. If you're an Adam Cole fan, Collision is probably the spot where you're going to see him featured more often. It's kind of weird, you see a guy who main evented their biggest show of all time, and now you really only see him on Saturdays. But hey, people crap on performers only being on Collision, or like, why is this happening on Collision? Why isn't it happening on Dynamite? If you want Collision to be a must-see show, or you want people to tune in to check out Collision, you have to have important things go down, right? So I don't understand the bitching and complaining about it, right? We get to the point where it looks as if Adam Cole is going to pick up the W because he hit the Panama Sunrise on Cole, but he is interrupted, and we get a DQ run-in finish by Josh Alexander. We have Brody King come out to even the odds and make the save with a chair. That leads us to Brody King versus Josh Alexander. This is a qualifying match for that four-way that I was speaking about. You had all the bells and whistles with the Don Callis family involved, except Takeshita, who, if you didn't see this weekend, publicly announced his marriage, which was great, right? You want to see good things happen for people like that. Takeshita's a hardworking individual. Brody King, obviously, any match that he's involved, you're going to see the hard chops. With Josh Alexander, you're going to see the kicks. You're going to see a lot of hard-hitting action with these guys. It's good to see Josh Alexander wrestle again on Dynamite. He's somebody who was a very much so hyped up signing for AEW. He's somebody who most people thought was going to go to the WWE because of their connection with TNA. But he wanted to go to AEW because he basically, he says, man, I'm a hooper. I want to go where the hoopers hoop, right? But you see Brody win with a bonsai bomb. Josh was busted open at the end. A little bit of blood. Doesn't hurt anybody. The main event segment is between Mercedes Moné and Toni Storm. Now, before I even talk about the segment, I'm getting the feeling, right? I don't think that this is reaching. But I'm getting the feeling that the way all it is going to play out is Hangman and Mox are going to be the main event, right? If this match doesn't main event that show, then no women's match is going to ever main event All In. Because these are the two biggest women that they have on the roster. They're the two biggest mainstream names that they have on the roster that most people would know who don't tune into AEW on a weekly basis would recognize. So if these two aren't main eventing that show, then I don't think we're ever going to see two women main event All In, right? Mercedes comes out first. She's talking about how, she's the GOAT. Names all these different things that she's won. She's been the biggest winner in the UK, Japan. She name drops Owen, who is the person who the cup is named after. She name drops Eddie, which is obviously her hero, and gets a big reaction due to the fact that they're in Paso. But she said, those legends don't compare to me, right? Then we get interrupted by Toni Storm. Gets a nice warm reaction, which she should. Toni puts her belt on the ground right between her and Mercedes. And Mercedes says, these AEW fans, man, they're sick of the black and white. They want some more color. Obviously, Mercedes is known for her colorful hair, colorful appearance. Back there, my goat. Toni says she's been waiting for Mercedes, ever since that we've had that show in Boston. She has been waiting for this confrontation between Mercedes Moné. She names all these different things that Mercedes has accomplished. And she said, and not once have you called me out or have you, mentioned my name or even shook my hand, basically insinuating that she's been ducking her the whole time. Mercedes says this is patience. Toni says that, Mercedes, you've beaten them all. You are the GOAT, basically. You've amassed all these different titles. But you need all these different titles, but I only need one, and that's the AEW Women's Championship. And she basically, the line of the night And she said that if you want to ride the money train inside the Tony tunnel, you are going to have to go deeper. These sexual innuendos get me every single time because it's like, who comes up with this? Who comes up with this shit, right? And she talks about there's going to be some little girl who's going to watch their match at All In, and she's going to say, holy shit, these bitches are crazy, right? Then Tony calls Mercedes the greatest of all time, but then she reminds Mercedes that she is timeless. We tease a little spot where there's sportsmanship, where it both looks as if they're going to shake each other's hands, but they both go for a maneuver. They both are able to escape, and that's how we end this episode of Dynamite. We have a little bit over 45 days until All In. And it's going to be really interesting to see how they're going to be able to build these matches up. The crescendo of these matches, I think, is going to be very interesting. Just outside of the fact, the surface level storyline of Mercedes and Tony being two people who are just the biggest in the division, I want to see what the personal aspect they're going to get into when they talk about this. They approached it a little bit when they talked about how, this isn't the same. We're not the same two people that we've known. Obviously, they crossed paths in WWE. You saw Tony bring up kind of like a jab at the WWE saying, we were given all these different things, all these different praising and all these different things, but we had to come to AEW to be ourselves, right? Because as we all know, Tony's run in WWE, especially on the main roster, was a freaking disaster. Mercedes, it's documented that her unsatisfaction of what was going down towards her end of her WWE run. So this isn't anything new. This isn't anything groundbreaking, but I'm excited for that match. I think it was a very solid show. Altogether, man, probably the weakest spot was the Tekla debut. And no offense to Tekla, just because it didn't come off as a big deal. People kind of were, it was like a dud. But hey, it is what it is. She'll be able to build off of this, talent. The great Randy Savage once says, cream rises to the top, and hopefully we'll be able to see that. But hey, at the end of the day, good show. Thumbs up. Look forward to next week. We're going to be here on Monday Night Raw to do the post show for that. And again, that 4-hour Dynamite marathon, I'll be live afterwards for that as well. Look out for Money in the Bank. That's going to be going on the 7th. I will be live immediately following that as well. But guys, it's late. Remember, hit the like button and subscribe. Hit the like button and subscribe. Hit the like button and subscribe. I am Kevin Zwicker. I'm out.